Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day here. It is one of my favorite news segments, reintroducing it to the show. My fact versus fiction segment. I have 4 bold fantasy football takes that have come up for Week 9, and I'm going to prove whether they are justifiable ones or debatable ones. Now, hope you guys enjoyed this segment yet again. This is something that I'm going to integrate into a lot of my shows, whether it be towards the end of the week or towards the beginning of the week. Let me know what you think about where I should place them throughout the shows in the future. Without further ado, let's just jump right into this one. Starting off, the prediction that feels a bit closer to home, so to speak, after their performance last night. Talk about Daniel Jones. I predicted that a bold take would be him hitting the over in passing yards for Week 9. I don't remember who they are facing this week. I believe it is the Commanders this weekend. But I'm going to double check. It is the Washington Commanders. So technically a secondary who certain teams should be able to take advantage of. But I don't think necessarily the Giants. And that is why I labeled it as fiction here. Now, there are ways in which, Daniel Jones can, in the future, hit the over in passing yards, and I believe he actually might have hit the over in passing yards last night. There are ways in which, in the short to intermediate areas of the field, Daniel Jones has easy completions for easy yards. But in the grand scheme of things, the Giants' offense just isn't sustainable trying to dink and dunk the football against certain teams. It could work because Daniel Jones, for what it's worth, is decent at diagnosing those areas of the field and getting the ball to receivers, but it's not in an explosive enough manner to put points on the board, to win football games, most importantly. And so, while the Washington Commanders secondary is certainly not the most difficult he's going to face all year, it's certainly one that, even though I don't necessarily like them in this matchup with Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson, I feel like Daniel Jones might not be able to exploit. And not for nothing, I'm more high on the Washington Commanders defensive front than a lot of people. I like what they're doing up front in terms of generating pressure. So, look for Daniel Jones to struggle and the offense as a result to struggle for the Giants in this divisional game, just going to show how far they've fallen from the heights of the NFC East and how far the gap is between them and those other teams in the East as well. So look for this fact to be fiction in the future, so to speak. And the second one that I want to discuss is one that can hit, in my opinion, and a lot of optimism surrounding this after the Arizona Cardinals' performance against, well, now I'm blanking on who the Cardinals faced this past week. The Dolphins this past week. A lot of hope now surrounding this particular take. The Cardinals having their tight end, McBride, and wide receiver, Harrison, in fantasy top 10. And I think this will be fact, especially after the performances last week. And it all depends on, like I said, the outlook of the Cardinals offense. Because I love what this offense can be at its best. And we've seen what it can be at its best. Kyler Murray working out of structure, utilizing his arm and his legs, and getting those weapons that he knows can contribute at a high level, those nice production yards. But in certain moments, it certainly looks like the Cardinals' offense can shoot itself in the foot, so you never really know how to gauge players like McBride and Harrison. But after this week's performance, I have high hopes that this offense could get clicking, and in this next game, before, a tough divisional stretch, I believe they are playing. Let me check again. I'm sorry that I have to go back and forth between the schedules here. The Bears, which is another tough matchup for them, but still one that I feel kind of okay about, considering the fact that, certain receivers have had their way with this Bears secondary. I feel like, the Cardinals will continue to find a rhythm on the offense, because make no mistakes about it. This is a team in the thick of the NFC West playoff race at 4-4, along with all the other teams in that division. So, if these weapons can get going, and fulfill this prediction, then I feel that the Cardinals truly are a contender to win this division and make a deep playoff run, because their offense at its best can compete with anybody. But it's highly contingent on week in and week out consistency. So, while I love this prediction and want it to be fulfilled and think it will, based off what we've seen from the best of this offense, there's still a seed of doubt in my mind that week in, week out, this offense will not remain consistent. But just knowing there are players of this caliber on this team that can really elevate it to the highest heights, I feel like any kind of take surrounding these two players can pretend to be fact. So look for this one to potentially hit this week. And I think actually hit this past week as well. So it could be a double whammy here. The third one I want to talk about kind of is more of an overarching one rather than, just for this week. DeAndre Hopkins making an immediate impact for the Chiefs, and he actually did play this past weekend against the Raiders. Didn't necessarily have a big game, but did have a noticeable one at that, But I think that this will be fiction. And the reason why I think it will be fiction is because I don't necessarily feel like the Chiefs were sweating trading for him, because of the fact that in-house, the Chiefs felt like they probably had enough to continue to win. This was more of a matter of shoring up their team for the long run. That's what I mean by saying this take is an overarching one, because I feel that this take can prove to be fact in the future because of the thinness now at the Chiefs wide receiver position. But who could have predicted, Watson going down with a season-ending injury, couple other players, Juju, going out for quite some time as well. So, who knows? He now has a very important role in how the Chiefs will look in the future, especially considering the fact that in the playoffs they might want to make a deeper run, and they're looking at a three-peat. So, this take could come back to bite me, but for now, I'm going to say fiction just because I feel like the Chiefs are kind of disguising the fact that they know they have ways to cover for their offensive struggles at this point, outside of DeAndre Hopkins. And if they trusted that, then I don't necessarily think their record would be as different without D-Hop than it would be with it. So we'll see how this take pans out, but it's something to monitor, really, because I think that, the Chiefs are one of those teams that can weather any storm. But it's highly dependent on, how they view themselves. Because if they truly made this trade to go out and win another Super Bowl, to three-peat, then this opinion holds more weight because it could be turned around. But if the Chiefs receivers who are secondary weapons start to step up, guys like Worthy, guys like Hardman, guys like Moore, who I believe is still there, they step up as well, then the Chiefs really were disguising the thinness of this wide receiver room for nothing. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, because it's a very contentious take here. Because it could be true when it matters, but for now, it's kind of up in the air because we'll never truly know what the Chiefs were thinking in acquiring DeAndre Hopkins in a time where it felt like, things were clicking for weapons other than Rashee Rice at that time. The last one I want to talk about here before we end today's show, Jalen McMillan can surprise in fantasy. We actually saw some proof of this past week against the Falcons, and that he still is a valuable asset to this Bucs team, despite, potentially falling on the pecking order once Mike Evans comes back, and, potentially ceding touches to guys like Irving, White, and Otten in this offense. But he still is someone who I think is the biggest X factor in these next couple of games, sans Evans and Godwin for the Bucs, because of his ability to really alter the game in different ways. They're playing the Chiefs in a primetime game this week, and It's looking like one of those games where if you know the Bucs can retain the football, if they prove that they can do well against certain teams, then you know players such as McMillan, Otten can produce at a high level. But this is a Chiefs defense that's very tough to crack. So you're going to have to find ways to stretch them out a little bit. Really find ways to vary your offensive looks, employ a lot of more people, utilize them to the best of their abilities. And I feel like the Bucs are well equipped to do that because Baker has gained a lot of trust, not just in Evans and Godwin, but this entire team and its infrastructure. So look for him to get a guy like McMillan more involved because he knows that McMillan's a valuable asset and he's quickly growing into his role in this team. And this will continue to be a fact. I will sing his praises for as long as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are out because of the fact he's earning this opportunity in a way that can cement him as someone the Bucs will look to build around in the future. Because I feel like this Bucs team needs to start thinking about, what a team without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin will look like. Because that future is coming quicker than you think. So, Jalen McMillan, your time is now, my friend. You have the opportunity to completely take over this team for the time being and prove that you're a nice little building block for the future as well. And to fantasy football managers, prove that you could be a high-end wide receiver too, or even a dynasty league kind of personality to look out for. Let me know what you think in the comments, because that will just about do it for today's show. This has been the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you all for tuning in. I've been Christopher Shepard. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Podcast. GSMC Sports Network, first and foremost, for allowing us to do this show. If you want more content such as this, consider liking, following, and subscribing to the show in the network. If you want to interact with the show more directly throughout our live streams, consider making use of the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. But other than that, we will be back tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another great edition of the show. I am out until then.